Hey everyone, welcome to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast, where we highlight everyday humans doing crazy amazing things. I'm Katrina Carlson.
And I'm Jefferson Denham.
Jefferson, I have one question for you today.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to get high?
Well, the short answer is yes, but Kat, I think you need to explain.
Well, it's no secret that we live in a world that can be very divided. We see division all around us every day. And I don't know about you, but it can leave me feeling pretty hopeless sometimes. So when I said, do you want to get high? I'm referring to how it's scientifically proven that when you hear uplifting stories, happiness hormones are released like dopamine, serotonin, and endorphins.
Right. Happiness hormones. I could use some of that. I think we all could use a little more of that nowadays. All right. So today we're going to highlight how people of very different belief systems and cultures maintain their unique identities, yet still coexist and experience community with one another. So in this episode, we're featuring 7 diverse members of our crazy, amazing humans community. And you will hear a bit about them and their take on what it means to coexist.
That is right. So we're going to hear from the following crazy, amazing humans. Roger Fishman, a photographer and filmmaker who shares his journey in the Jewish faith. Dr. Tom Katrina, who is a Catholic lay missionary and serves at the Mother Mercy Hospital in Sudan.
Our friend Mo Balaji, an independent filmmaker who is a Muslim.
Deepa Bharath, an Associated Press journalist who was raised in the Hindu faith.
Robert Scheer, a professor at USC, a journalist and author who is an atheist and a humanist. Chantal Prunier from Los Angeles, who is a practicing Buddhist.
And Ryan Boyette, a Protestant Christian who founded and runs nonprofit schools in Africa called To Move Mountains.
We wanted to highlight how much we all have in common despite our differences.
So stay tuned and get your very own dose of happiness hormones, and let's get high together.
Right. And as always, we are here to remind you that you are crazy amazing.
I want you to feel, I want you to feel something crazy, crazy amazing.
Hi, this is Lisa McKnight, and you're listening to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and on the Crazy Amazing Humans YouTube channel, so you'll be the first to know when a new episode comes out.
I'm Roger Fishman. I have an amazing, almost 16-year-old son. I'm a photographer and filmmaker. Both my parents are Jewish.
My name is Dr. Tom Katrina. I'm a medical doctor and the medical director in Sudan's Mother Mercy Hospital in the Nuba Mountains of Sudan. And I would call myself a lay medical missionary in the Catholic Church.
Hi, my name is Mo Balaji Olambiwanu. My dad is a Muslim Nigerian, and my mom is a Christian Jamaican. I'm a Muslim, and I'm a filmmaker from Los Angeles, California.
Hi, I'm Deepa Bharath. I've lived in Los Angeles for about 25 years. I'm a journalist. I was raised a Hindu.
Hi, this is Robert Scheer. Usually I say with another edition of Scheer Intelligence for KCRW. I have a website called Scheer Post, and I am a professor at the University of Southern California at the Annenberg School.
I'm Chantal. I live in Los Angeles, but I was born in France. I was raised Catholic. I came to the idea that I could not choose a religion and that I had to leave it at the spiritual level. Buddhism is spiritual. It's a spirituality. We don't believe in God per se.
Hi, this is Ryan Boyette. I grew up in a Christian home in the U.S., in Florida, from living in the Nuba Mountains of Sudan.
So you've just been introduced to our 7 guests.
Let's go back and start with Roger Fishman.
Ultimately, when I became 39, I did get bar mitzvahed. And part of the reason is because I think it's important to know yourself, your history, learn from it, but also be proud of it too. And I thought I wanted a connection again to something more than just today. I wanted a connection from the past to the present so I could build a strong future. And I think an important part of Judaism for me is a fundamental tenet called tikkun olam, which is to heal the world, which means that there's a requirement, a commitment to make the world better and to serve the world, not just in the way that I think so, but more importantly, as the world needs. I think when you can show people that you care for them and you want to connect with them and you allow them to have choice and freedom and how you do that, right? I think it's one of the highest services for me that I can have a life, and it reinforces the notion of tikkun olam. So that is just part of how I try to practice it and apply it. And it's also how I try to live when I meet people. So I travel the world, how I've been anywhere from literally Iran to Israel, to Greenland, to Namibia, to Antarctica. And everywhere I go, the whole notion is to listen to people, to ask questions, to learn, to connect. And in return, they connect with me. And that, I think, gets you closer, because once you know each other, you care about each other. You can find commonalities, not the differences. And then you have the relationship, even if it's for just a taxi ride, a boat trip, a plane trip. And to me, that's where the world becomes smaller and more beautiful. And frankly, allows us to not only coexist together, but also to understand each other. When you think about the world as 8 billion people, so let's just simply do a math equation. 10% of 8 billion is 800 million. 1% is 80 million. There's only 15 million Jewish people in the world. So that's 1/6 of 1%. And then you go, well, how would people even know a Jewish belief system or care about Jewish people if they've never even met one or engaged with one? All they do is know what they've heard on social media. It's understandable that people have a misunderstanding because they're just getting attacked with lies on social media or through people who have fear and want to sort of bring more into their power base. So I have to say, I don't think it's a misunderstanding based on experience. It's just a misunderstanding based on numbers. And so if you look at the United States, there's 330 million people. So again, less than 2% of the people are Jewish, which means that 85, 90% of Congress doesn't have any Jewish people in their districts. And so you go, oh, wow, well, how can they understand us, relate to us, if they've never even met one of us? So I think in life, meeting people and taking the time to share with each other and learn allows us to understand the commonality and helps us at least coexist in a more intelligent, experienced way.
You know, my family is very devout Roman Catholic family. My dad was a daily mass goer since the 1960s. And, you know, the idea of faith was very important growing up. The idea of service, the idea of giving back, all that groundwork was laid as I was a kid growing up in Amsterdam, New York. Christianity is a lived faith. It's not something you did in your spare time. It wasn't something you did, you know, for an hour on Sunday. You know, you got to live it 24/7. Make it part of your life. Make it a part of who you are. So I think through those evangelical friends, I got the idea, hey, you know, mission work is something possible even for you as a Catholic, you know, and then that seed got planted when I was back in college. So it wasn't until after I graduated from college that I got the idea of going into medicine as a way to basically do mission work and also, you know, maintain my love of the sciences. For me, without that belief system, I don't think I would still be here. I think I would have done it. I would have done mission work for, you know, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. And then when the thrill of working in a foreign country and the idea of working in exotic cultures and seeing really strange and interesting diseases, that eventually wears off. You know, what's left? Well, what's left is really service and a lot of drudgery, a lot of suffering, and a lot of hard times. The work is difficult. It's exhausting. It's psychologically taxing. I think without that basis of faith, I don't think I would have stuck it out. We are, you know, I think Christianity is very clear on what our obligation is to our brothers and sisters. I mean, you know, whatever you do to at least my brothers and sisters, you do to me. The Bible, Gospels are full of Christ's teachings on this issue.
I am Nigerian and Jamaican, raised both in Nigeria and the United States. My dad is a Muslim Nigerian and my mom is a Christian Jamaican. And I was raised both as a Muslim and a Christian. I grew up going to both the church and the mosque, burning through my entire weekend, not having much free time as a child and somewhat resentful of the whole experience. My belief system, probably because it's based on having been raised both Muslim and Christian and having seen those two religions up close, my belief system is that while they are different, they are not that much different. As one would think, what my spiritual faith teaches me is that though I tend to lean towards Islam, that all religions are valid. Anything that guides you in the direction of some level of peace, some level of personal tranquility, is something that I think I wholeheartedly support people engaging in. And for some people that may be, yoga, maybe meditation, and maybe, again, coming from a family with a Buddhist and a Jew, a Muslim, a Christian. And then, of course, in addition to that, people who are, Korean, Eastern European, Nigerian, Jamaican, there's a lot to learn from that whole melding of cultures and of religions. What I learned and what I take with me is that there's no space for single stories. There's no space for assumptions about any one group of people. And so my religion and my faith really speaks to being open to all those things and all those people. I went on Hajj in 2013 to Saudi Arabia, and it was one of the spiritual highlights of my life, the call to prayer in the mosque in Mecca, the beauty of that voice and the way it reverberated through the mosque and the way they designed everything to have the sound just be so impactful to the body and to the spirit. Those of us in the West would understand it if you've done a sound bath or something like that. Though that's not a voice, it's still the way in which the way that it impacts your body and the way that your body vibrates is not dissimilar, except you're doing this en masse with 50,000 other people. So it's sound bath times 50,000. That was probably one of my great spiritual moments. And I think I want to reflect on that when I talk about Islam, and I want people to reflect on that level of peace and that level of tranquility that I felt when we talk and think about Islam, because I did not experience when I went on Hajj and when I went to Mecca, the level of generosity of people, the level of kindness of people far supersedes anything that I've experienced in the West. To be in Mecca, to be in Saudi Arabia, and to see the unsiloed spiritual experience where people of different faiths cannot even speak the same languages are together in one space, respectful of one another, bringing their culture, bringing their costumes, bringing their language, and being accepted. So I have great admiration for that. And it's something that I will always appreciate.
So I was raised a Hindu. I grew up in India. I came to the US when I was 24. I grew up in a very traditional Hindu household, and my parents are extremely conservative religious people. My dad had a lot of progressive ideas, and I was very questioning as a young child. I was very inquisitive, not surprisingly. I'm a journalist. I had a lot of questions, particularly about religion, why we do the things we do, or why we did the things we did, about rituals, the significance of ritual in life, and the significance of religion. And so my mom reacted to it very differently. My mom said, well, you don't ask these questions because it's not right. You just listen to your elders. That's the cultural upbringing in India. But my dad was more open about it. He engaged with me, explained the whys and hows and whatnots, which was very helpful to me. I rebelled a little bit when I was a teen against it because I saw a lot of things that I did not like in my religious background, one of them being caste and the inequalities that came with it. It always rubbed me the wrong way when I was growing up. I just didn't think it was right. But as I started studying Hinduism more, especially after I left India, and I looked deeper into my own background and my own religion and really delved to the core of the religion, what the faith was saying, I realized that it was not even a faith, it's not even a religion, it's a philosophy, it's a way of life. And that's how I practice Hinduism. If you look at the core, which can be found in a text called the Upanishads, it says that everything is one, everybody's one. We all come from the same place, we go to the same place. So you must have all heard the term namaste. That's our greeting, right? And namaste essentially means I salute the divine in me, salutes the divine in you. So when the core of your being is the same as the core of the other person's being, how can you be against anyone? How can you hurt someone else? And that's where the principle of nonviolence comes from, ahimsa, as we call it in Sanskrit. To me, like when someone says Hindu extremist, that in itself is jarring. I'm like, this is not a religion that preaches extremism of any kind. It's the opposite. The core philosophy is extremely inclusive. It goes beyond tolerance. It goes as far as to say that the other person is made of the same stuff as you are at a very deep molecular atomic level. How can you even think of hurting another one? Because if you hurt the other one, it's like you're hurting yourself. That is the Hinduism I look at. I know not everyone will agree with me on all of this, but Hinduism is a very ancient faith tradition, and it's existed for millennia. It's interpreted in many different ways. People observe Hinduism in many ways. And so, I mean, when you come from that belief system, it's so easy to like look at the other person and say, well, we're all one. There's no difference between you and me. We might look different. We might eat different things. We might speak a different language, but hey, we're all the same.
I was born in 1936. It was the worst year of the Great Depression. My father, who wasn't married to my mother, had another family, lost his job. He was a good guy, was certainly going to step up and help raise me, which he did. And then, the war came, but the war was very confusing. My mother was a Russian Jew immigrant from Lithuania, and she left after the Russian Revolution. And what was confusing about the war was my father was born a German Lutheran, and my German relatives were, some were Catholic, but mostly were Protestant. They were German. They had German accents. And the drama of the war, by then I'm conscious of what's going on. My German family was killing my Russian family. My father actually, he fell in love with my mother, and they were great parents, very tolerant of everybody, very moral, decent people. And they found ethics and morality despite religion. That doesn't mean you can't find it in religion. Ethics, religion became significant precisely because people wanted to find bigger meaning to life. But why do you have religion, right? Unless you think it's God's will. But I think people have religion. They have codes of ethic in every society. Indigenous cultures have different codes of ethics, rules. How do we live together? How do we take care of each other? What is our obligation to the family? The search for ethics is universal, my view. And ethical culture was another way of doing it on a Saturday or Sunday, get together and talk about it. I can't teach an ethics class without talking about religion because that's where, a good portion of the discussion about ethics has taken place. Wherever you get your ethics, if it advances human society, I'm with it.
I live in Los Angeles at the moment, but I grew up in France. I was born in a very small village. My parents raised me on the vineyard. It was a very rustic life. Didn't have many things, but a lot of happiness. People were mostly of one religion, Catholic. And when I came to the United States, I started practicing Catholicism for a little while. I very quickly realized that it's perceived very differently than in France. And I felt a little unsure about what to do with my spirituality for quite a while. I came to the idea that I could not choose a religion and that I had to leave it at the spiritual level. Buddhism is spiritual. It's a spirituality. We don't believe in God per se. Buddhism is a complicated religion. And I found my way finally when I went to Tibet after visiting other Buddhist countries in the world. Through the various religions that are practiced around me here in Los Angeles, in the US, in the Western world, that people disassociate their belief and their good deeds. By being a Buddhist, I have to be good, I have to be the best, and all the time. Because if my life ended this minute, if a bomb came on my house, or I had a heart attack and lost my life, I would be reborn as good as I was when I lost my life. So I have to be good all the time. I have been lucky enough to travel a lot, and I have been active with various endeavors. One of them, for example, is Dollies Making a Difference, where I would bring dollies to children in orphanages around the world. This is just a small example of how I try to integrate this when I would basically leave my comfortable environment.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Christian home in a little town in Florida, and there was about 20 families in the First Baptist Church of Boca Grande that I grew up in. And it was a really close-knit community. And I got the chance through that church to then go travel the world and do work and help in areas that I've never seen before. And that actually opened my eyes up to the world. I got to be in cultures in Australia. I lived with the Aborigines for 3 months. I worked in Haiti quite a bit. And through that, I learned so many different things about different cultures and races and ethnicities. And I just learned so much more about the diversity in the world and how we all had a lot of things in common. So as a Christian, following the teachings of Jesus, I saw how he interacted with people. And he always did it in a way that was a lot of times asking questions. Most of the time, if you read the Bible, it's Jesus asking people questions and letting them think through that. And I like that. I think it's a way we learn from each other. I think it's a way that we understand the world around us. And I actually think it's a way to have good conversation. And when we ask questions of each other, we might understand where those disagreements might root from, or how to have just a good conversation with someone where you can learn from each other. A big misconception about Christianity is that it's just all about judgment. And which is funny to me because I see those were the things that Jesus actually got angry about. He never really got angry except from the church leaders because they were so hard and so judgmental on people and like, you're not following this rule and this law. And he was not like that at all. But I don't see that in the way Jesus did things.
Hey y'all, this is Bruin from Charlotte, North Carolina. You're listening to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast with Katrina, Carlson, and Jefferson Denham. I love this show. I hope you do.
Today's episode of the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast is brought to you via Apple, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. All episodes are free, so make sure and subscribe today.
Now we'll hear from our 7 guests about their thoughts on what it means to coexist.
Coexisting means a lot of different things to me as a human being. And I think, at the core of it, it's people just allowing each other to be who they are without trying to impose themselves on the other. So I don't expect anyone to be like me or to believe like I do. I just don't want their belief systems to be imposed on me either. I want to live with my own choices, my own freedom, and I don't want to infringe that upon anyone. Nor would I suggest that. The same is true too. So I think coexisting also means being able to find a civil way to engage with each other, to also accept that we all have our own fears, our own vulnerabilities. I also think that we have a lot more in common. If you took away religion, you said people to people, the amount we have in common is amazing. Whether it's we love our children, we love pets, we love nature. You go through the list of all the things. There's hundreds and not thousands of what means we have in common, which means it's easy to coexist. So I think, to me, coexisting is not allowing what we believe makes us different be the way that we define ourselves in context to each other, and just maybe in context of ourselves to ourselves. We all realize we're all on the same team, which is like to our team humanity, team humans. And there's always going to be a bell-shaped curve of how our behavior is distributed. It's historical, right? It's not as if we're living at a time that's never existed. If you go through history, we are who we are. There's differences now with technology, how things are amplified, right? But there's always been extremists on both sides. And I think coexisting means finding that the strong 80%, and I believe it's 80% at least, that say, oh, you know what, we're really going to stand up to have the voice of kindness, real coexistence, where you can do you, I do me, and that's okay. And then we keep the lid, I do mean to keep the lid on the extremist, on both sides, all sides. So that to me is coexisting, is we all get to have our lives feeling safe while we're doing it. To not choose to coexist is to take away the possibility of the gift of joy and meaning and pleasure in your life. It means that you're going to put your energy in a negative way versus a positive way. And I think we all do have choices in life. And so I choose to believe in the positivity, being pragmatic as well. But I think that we have a choice. And I think where we get the most meaning out of life is when we're connected to ourselves and to all of life.
The idea of coexisting for me is simply everyone has a right and the duty to have your own faith, and you have the right to live that out to the best of your ability and as fully as you want. And nobody should interfere with that. The only time is when that faith or that you can't use it to bully somebody else or to push somebody else aside. And I think as part of your faith, you have to allow them to live that faith out without interfering with what they're doing. Certainly here at the Mother Mercy Hospital, we are a Catholic mission hospital, and our patient population is probably 70% Muslim. We have a lot of Muslims on the staff. Everybody here in the mountains is an animist and an ancestor worshiper. Nobody's bothered by it. We're here to serve whoever walks through our door, and there's never a distinction made based on your religion or your beliefs, whatever comes along. That's not certainly excluding somebody based on their belief is definitely not a part of Catholicism. It never has been, and it hopefully never will be. That's not what we're about. I think the Nuba are fairly unique in their treatment of each other. Here, you've got Christians and Muslims that live together in almost perfect harmony. Now, I don't want to kind of fairy tale it. There are a lot of other problems, but in terms of religion, nobody's bothered by it. Like just as an example, my wife, her father was a Muslim, her older brother was a Muslim. He's dead. They're both dead now. And a lot of people in our family are Muslim. So she's not. She's Roman Catholic, and so am I. But nobody is disturbed by any of that. Everybody says, "Fine, you do what you want. You practice your faith. If you're interested in what we do, we're happy to tell you. But otherwise, we're not going to force anything down your throat. It's up to you to believe." And I think the people here in the mountains have it right, especially you see all the conflict and problems in the Middle East and everywhere else. People just very dogmatic and kind of forcing their way on everybody else. It's just not the way to be.
Yeah, I think coexisting means interrogating our power relationships, means looking at a situation, as a man, what is my power relationship in this situation, and how am I leveraging or potentially misusing, without even knowing it, my power relationship as a man? How am I misusing my power relationship as a white person? How am I misusing my whatever those power dynamics are? Consistently interrogating those power dynamics in such a way that there is space for someone who does not have the same amount of power that you do within that particular situation. I think you can only coexist if you continuously interrogate those power dynamics, and you consistently are willing to relinquish power in a way that allows for the other person to have the space to be their full self, right? And you understand that them being their full self creates a better world for you, right? Because, if someone is diminished, then there's a loss of whatever greatness they might have to offer to that situation. Whatever greatness they may have to offer to the world is lost when they're diminished. And so when you approach the world in a way that allows for them to be their full selves, and for you to interrogate yourself in a way that allows for you to be your full self, right, unencumbered by those prejudices, unencumbered by those privileges, unearned privileges, then I think there's space to coexist. But coexistence cannot happen when there are unequal power dynamics. And I think there's often a misconception that we can all just come together and be in the same space without the idea that even when we're in the same space with one another, there are still power dynamics at play. There are still beauty standards, right? The heavyset person has less rights than the skinny person, the blonde person versus the brown-haired person versus, there are all these power dynamics that exist because of how we're socialized, and we cannot automatically put those aside. There have to be conscious decisions made at every moment in order to continuously put those aside, and in order to continuously hear and be a sort of an open space to hear what other people are experiencing and feeling within this space. And is everybody comfortable? Is everybody at peace? Does everybody have a voice within this environment? I think when that is possible, if that is possible, coexistence is possible on a level that is really unimaginable. That's how coexistence can be made possible. And that's what coexistence for me is. It's a constant interrogation of where we are and looking at where we could go or who we could be within a space.
Coexistence means, let's all live together, as peacefully as we possibly can. Live and let live, right? Coexist. let's all exist together. I would like to see us go beyond that. You know, my hope and optimism for humankind goes beyond coexisting and beyond tolerating one another. I think it would be awesome if we could work together and learn from one another, and absorb each other's ideas, beliefs, perspectives, go beyond coexisting. When I'm doing my work as a religion reporter, I speak with many people of many different faith backgrounds, and I see how what they have in common far exceeds what their differences. So sometimes it's frustrating to me as a person, when I see people saying the same thing, but feel like, oh, we are so different. I'm like, no, I mean, you both said exactly the same thing. I mean, you believe the same thing. So, but it can be hard when you have so many other superficial differences. It can be hard to come together and see that common ground, to be in that common ground. I think it takes a certain mindset and willingness to be there, to stand in that common ground, and sometimes stand in discomfort to be able to achieve that coexistence that we're speaking of.
First of all, coexistence, I never thought we had an option to not coexist. I lived in a tenement building. If I went up the stairs, no elevator, by the way, but if I went up the stairs here, I had Greek and Russian Orthodox. Neither of them talked to each other that much. And then you can go up. You had some Puerto Rican Catholic. And so over here, we were mostly Jewish, except my father was German Protestant by definition, which a lot of people brought up the definition. They didn't let him, hey, you're part of that German culture, which is awful, and you're Lutheran. You probably don't like Jews. You probably don't. No, my father would have to deal with it. So not coexisting was never an option. And religious tension was always going to be there. Come on, this is New York. You go 2 blocks that way, and you're all with these Irish people, right? Right. You go there, and they're from Central America or what have you. And you're negotiating this all the time. When I worked in a post office, which is how I went through college, I can assure you, every single group was represented. And you had coexistence also means watch what you say, don't offend. But we want to talk about life. We have developed ethics primarily to survive in complex communities. The second you have a little village, you have to have some ethics. You can't do this to me. I can't do to you. We got to do, these are the rules. Religion's another way of getting rules that allow you to coexist.
Well, coexisting is a wonderful concept. I've given it a lot of thought over the years. On the one hand, I was raised in a very homogeneous environment, as I think I mentioned earlier, and that meant that I coexisted with people that were very similar to me. That was really nice. There was no challenge to the religion, no challenge to the beliefs, and there was a lot of privacy and respect for each other. We live in a very different world these days. And so I have to remind myself constantly about how I need to be more understanding of other people and more accepting. And I could tell you some funny stories. In one of your recent episodes with Lisa McKnight, you talked about Barbie. And Lisa reminded us of the story of the origin of Barbie, which I had heard before. And believe it or not, I had not believed it. The reason is that Lisa mentioned that Barbies were created by this mom that wanted to empower her daughters and show them that there were some good role models around. Well, where I was growing up, we had one Barbie. And I remember sitting around this little round table where I was doing some work with these peas, with my aunts and my cousins. And my mom said, can you believe this doll, how sex-oriented it is? Look at the breast of this doll. Are you sure that this is a good thing for us all to have around? And that has colored my mind and my impression about Barbies all these years. My daughters did not have Barbies. And it wasn't really until the movie and until your podcast that I began to look at Barbies differently as this actually selfless, sexless, empowering object for girls. So the idea of coexisting, which is a fact, it's reality. You coexist with the world, you coexist with all the people around you. But that only becomes real for Buddhists when they when they use this freedom of mind, freedom of wants and desires, to put themselves back in the current world and to decide to be the best possible with other people. This may mean helping a child with homework. It may mean being extremely patient with someone else, asking for how you can help another person. It just means contributing in any way possible with those that you coexist with. And at this point, it's pretty much, as a Buddhist, it's pretty much your choice whether you choose to say that you coexist with your family, with just 3 people, say, as an example, or with your extended circle of friends and family, which could be a couple hundred people, or coexisting with the world. I mean, for me, since I live in Los Angeles, I can look at this as coexisting with all my fellow Americans. But it could also be coexisting with the world, literally with the world.
Coexisting is a very interesting word that I learned a lot more about the past few years of my life, and that's from living in the Nuba Mountains of Sudan. And in the Nuba Mountains, there's a lot of, I would say the majority of the people are Muslim, but there's a strong also Christian population here. And the interesting thing is they get along really well. They respect each other. They have conversations. Sometimes they'll have respectable debates and meet with each other and talk to each other. They'll visit each other's homes. Some of it is just normal living. And religion isn't even talked about, but a lot of times it is. And it's just sharing with each other. In certain holidays, they'll invite friends over. Christians will invite Muslims over for Christmas, and Muslims will invite friends over for a Ramadan feast. And it's nice to see, and in some ways, it's nicer than in the U.S. It's as far as being able to just have a conversation, I felt it was harder in the U.S. sometimes than it is here. In this place where there's conflict and there's many other things that are challenging, but to have a conversation with someone about their beliefs is very easy here.
If we're gonna feel alive, we gotta feel for each other. If we're gonna see the light, we gotta see one another. We belong together. We belong to each other. We belong, you and me together. We belong to each other, yeah, yeah.
Wow. A huge thank you to all of our guests who shared from their hearts on how they practice coexisting within their own personal belief systems. We hope you're having some good feels right about now and that you feel a little more connected to the great big family of humanity to which we all belong. If you've enjoyed today's episode and you think it would be meaningful and helpful for someone you know, be a crazy, amazing human and let them know about us.
Remember to make sure and subscribe to the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We've also filmed the podcasts, so you can check us out on the Crazy Amazing Humans YouTube channel. And while you're there, make sure and leave comments about how you coexist. We love to hear what you're thinking.
And I'm thinking that I'd like to thank you all for being with us today and remind you that every little kindness has the potential to create crazy, amazing human experiences, one person at a time.
And as always, this week, we want to encourage you to find one thing that you can do to extend kindness and love in the world. I'm Jefferson Denham.
And I'm Katrina Carlson. Stay healthy, stay connected, and we'll see you next time right here on the Crazy Amazing Humans podcast.
I want you to feel, I want you to feel something crazy, crazy, amazing.
If you have any questions or comments about today's episode, please make sure to write us at crazyamazinghumans@gmail.com.